All right, I just started the recording.
Wonderful. Well, hey, y'all. We're super excited to be with all of you this morning. We're going to be talking a little bit about beginning services at the time of recruitment. And this might not be a new concept for some of y'all, or maybe you do it for some of your populations, but not all of your populations. Maybe it's something that you've sort of work with, but are trying to come up with more strategies, right? So it's not just kind of like, here's a pamphlet, a pen, and a book. You've been served by the state of whatever state you're from. So we're really, really excited to be talking to y'all about this. We do have time built in at the end for questions and answers, but we'll try to kind of take turns monitoring either the chat or that Q&A box to go, to ask questions and talk as we go along. And we're going to try to build in a little bit of, time for y'all to respond and whatnot. But I recognize that on a virtual platform, it can be kind of hard to, have everybody unmuting and muting and whatnot. So we're going to try to build in a little bit of feedback, a little bit of back and forth. And Tracie, if you want to go first.
Sure. So just simply, you could read my biography, but I'm Tracie Kalic. I'm the director of iSOSY, and I'm going to talk in a little bit about what that is if you're not familiar with it.
And then I'm Emily Williams. I've been a recruiter since 2017 for the South Carolina Migrant Education Program, but I also used to work at the East Coast Migrant Head Start Project. Our friends over there for several years. And I also used to live and work in Sylva, North Carolina, where I worked for the Vecinos Farm Worker Health Program and an internship. And I'm pretty sure that even if I won the lottery, I would still keep doing OSY classes because it's just so much fun. That's just a little bit about us. So we're actually going to do a quick icebreaker. So you should be able to, you can either go to menti.com. I'm going to give everybody a minute because I know this is going to take you a minute to do. And I'm going to have to stop share to go over to the other page. But you can either click this link right here, or you could have clicked onto that thing. And then I accidentally stopped sharing the wrong way. Sorry, y'all. We're getting there. Or we can also go to, or you can also go to this page. I'm going to throw it in the chat box and it should take you right there. Great. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go to menti.com and you're going to use the code 9536577. And so if you don't mind just typing in, you've got a couple of minutes to type some stuff in about what is your favorite. If you're familiar with iSOSY materials, what is your favorite iSOSY material? The classes, lots of people say the classes, the free educational websites, you're not really sure yet, courses, websites, the lessons. Yeah, as somebody who doesn't have any formal like education experience outside of, just kind of like learning on the fly, either through East Coast or through this, I find it extremely helpful to have the education, like a lot of those lesson plans already done for you. They've got the warm-ups, you got pre and post tests, everything is already figured out for you. So you don't have to figure all that stuff out on your own, which makes it a lot less intimidating, I think, to do these kind of things. And see, does anybody say anything in the chat that's completely confusing? No, we're good. All right, good stuff. I'm going to give y'all maybe like one more minute to see if anybody else, the ACEs information. Yeah, there's a lot of really good professional development information out there too. So that will be really great for some of y'all. And nobody in the chat. What is iSOSY? That is such
I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah. Thank you for setting us up to answer that question. Wonderful. All right, I think that everybody who's going to respond is going to respond. But again, there's a second question. So if you're still getting onto that menti.com and want to use that code 9536577 to answer some questions, there will be another question in just a minute. So the next question is, what strengths do you bring as a recruiter when you're providing services? And this can be like formal training. This can be, just personality traits that you feel like help you. So we got knowledge. Some of you are bringing some hard knowledge to your work, which is wonderful. And I'm going to give y'all a few more minutes to kind of get onto that menti.com and use that code to answer. Understanding, communication, being bilingual, right? That's huge. Very, very helpful. Higher education, confidentiality. I love whoever said that. That is really, really important. Compassion, caring, translation. TESOL background, that is really helpful too. But yeah, that confidentiality, right? Families and students really, they're obviously very concerned about their privacy. So it's huge if you're able to do that. higher ed, translation, caring, knowing the community, big strength. Your parents used to work in the fields. Don't know who said that, but yeah, you already have so much knowledge, right? You could probably be teaching us a bunch of things. So that's really great. Years
Absolutely.
of service, empathy, understanding, all of these are really wonderful attributes to have. Similar backgrounds, years of service, and all the culture, context, those are all really important. Resourcefulness, yes, this session is definitely all
Absolutely.
about being resourceful, so that's cool. Very cool. It looks like we've kind of all gotten a chance to type in something. This is really great. I'm really glad that y'all shared some of these with us, and your desire to help. That helps. Like, people can always, I think, tell when you're sincere. Even, some of us have more bubbly personalities. Some people have maybe a more relaxed approach, but sincerity always comes through. And Pablo Gonzalez, you raised your hand. I don't know if you want to either chat, like write something in the chat or something that you wanted to add in. We got some bilinguals in the chat. Maybe you didn't mean to raise your hand. Not really sure. All right. So we're going to go on. Oh, and Yolanda raised a hand. I don't know how to do with you raised hand folks. I guess, did you want to talk? I can allow you to talk for a second if you wanted to say something.
No, I think it was just a mistake.
Okay, very good.
Yolanda put sorry in the chat.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure I didn't want to ignore anybody after I was like, please ask questions, and I ignore your thing. All right, so these are really great, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this just because we do have a lot of material to get through. But we'll be talking definitely a lot about these types of things. So we're going to pick back up where we left off. So, right, we're going to be talking a little bit about why it's important to serve people at the time of recruitment. This might, again, not be a new concept for some of you, or it might be a new concept for some of you. So we're just going to talk a little bit about why this is important. Because why bother learning it if it's not going to be relevant to you or to your program? This is why we think it's relevant. You're more likely to get that buy-in straight off the bat, especially, I know this happens to a lot of us, right? Where maybe you're the recruiter and you go sign somebody up and you're hoping that somebody's going to come and follow up with services. And then maybe they never do because either the student moves, the student falls off the map, they move their phone numbers, they just lose interest, whatever. By doing some sort of service at the time of recruitment, even if it's not like a hardcore academic service, you kind of get that immediate, like, okay, yeah, this is real. This is not some weird scam where they're coming to take my information from me, right? Like, they actually are going to provide some sort of services. We found that sometimes you can get people then to sign up either like during services. Like, I've started, I like tried to sign up a couple OSY. I did a class, and like while I'm doing class, some of the guys maybe come up to one of my coworkers like, oh, can I sign up too? Like, now that they see it's a legit thing. Or even afterwards, I might have a couple more students come up and say like, I didn't want to sign up before because I felt shy, but like, I just saw your class, or I was in your class, but I'm actually also an OSY. And so they'll sign up and talk to you a little bit. Obviously affects your funding, right? I think Jessica was sharing that like nationally, like less than half of students get any sort of service after being recruited. That's a really good way to boost your state's numbers and stats by being able to say like, yes, we actually did provide a service, even if it was just at the time of recruitment. You kind of got to approach it, right? You got to take advantage of the time you got. It starts you off in a better place with the family or with the students. And again, that does not have to be overly complicated to be quality. To be a quality service. So don't think too hard about, like, oh my gosh, I didn't teach them, geography or whatever, so I guess I can't count the service, right? There's definitely ways that you can work with students or with families at the time of recruitment that can still qualify as a service. Again, a well-placed referral with a follow-up and advocacy. Sometimes I find that even families or students remember that even more than maybe they remember like an educational activity that I did with them in their home. They're kind of like, oh yeah, I guess that was fine. But what was really great was that you got me hooked up with that dentist, and then I'll usually like go and put something on my calendar to remind myself to follow up with the family or student to make sure that referral, was successful and they got the services they needed, or followed up to advocate for them to receive some sort of service in the community. So that can be really beneficial for our families, even if it doesn't feel as academically as inclined. And again, it kind of keeps you away from that all or nothing mentality. So you're not thinking about it in terms of, oh, well, if I can't provide, 12 hours of high quality after school tutoring, then I guess we shouldn't bother to give any service at all, right? You can definitely provide a variety of services without having to worry too much about like maybe it fits perfectly well into it. current tutoring model that your state might have. And then of course, it's just the right thing to do. I think it's really not that hard to do. It's a good way to connect with your students, and it's just the right thing. And I see that Blanca is saying it's the fact that it builds trust and relationships, and that's true. It's also very, very true.
Okay, so some of you were not familiar with iSOSY. So similar to IDRC, we are a consortium incentive grant funded by the Office of Migrant Education. The goal of iSOSY, it stands for, first of all, Instructional Services for OSY and Secondary Youth. And it's really to look at increasing state and staff capacity to provide support and instruction to out-of-school youth and secondary students at risk of dropping out. If you haven't been to our website, I thoroughly encourage you to do so. We have 18 member states, and this is, I think I'm going into my 11th year as director of the consortium, and we've had different iterations. You may have heard of reference to Go SOSY or SOSY. I think at one point we were also SOSY, so we've been a lot of OCs. But I do want to share with you on the next slide. We know as recruiters, obviously, you're very short on time while you're trying to identify, recruit, and potentially provide an initial service. So we've come up with a very timely and appropriate solution for you, and that is our COVID-19 life skills lesson. We also have on the website what we call a Padlet of resources for families and for students, all that contains timely and accurate information about COVID. If you take a look at the COVID-19 lesson, you'll see it's modeled after our other life skills lessons. It addresses vocabulary and comprehension. It is very graphically rich. There are pre and post assessments, and it's very engaging content. But since we have all lived this and know it so well, this can be delivered very, very quickly. It's available in multiple languages, and I'm really excited to tell you, if you go to the website, you can find the lesson available in Arabic, Swahili, English, Spanish, Nepali, and Korean. We also just developed, and I'm going to be announcing this this week, we have 2 Ed Puzzles. If you haven't used Ed Puzzles, they're wonderful videos that you can create, that you can add questions to, that allow students to check their own understanding. And we have 2, one in English and one in Spanish, that go along with this lesson. So really useful. On the next slide, I also just wanted to share with you some of the, oh, I forgot about this. Let me go back. Yeah, I was going to do this. Nope, go to the pre-assessment. Okay, we're going to do this. So just to also prove to you how quickly and how much you already know, let's take the pre-test. So the pre-assessment, there are 5 questions, and can we have them unmute themselves, or do they just have to answer in the chat?
Might have to answer in the chat. I mean, if somebody raises their hand, I can find them in the participants and
okay, that's okay. Let's just try it this way. All right, so I'll read the question and you all will just answer in the chat very quickly. So we are going to really look at your prior knowledge here. So 6 feet is 1 arm's length from another person. Yes or no? Really fast. Oh, yeah, everybody's getting it. Okay. All right. Yep, you got it. Great. Number 2, here we go. You can get the virus from a person with no symptoms. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. You are rocking the pretest. Okay, number 3, you can get the virus by breathing in droplets of air. Yes, yes, yes. All right, you already know so much. 100.0 Fahrenheit is an elevated body temperature. Some confusion on this one, maybe? Yes, it is. Okay, excellent. And the last one, to get rid of germs, you should wash your hands for at least 15 to 20 seconds. Oh, everybody's saying yes? Well, I tricked you. You want to do it at least 20 seconds. All right, Jorge, you got it right. So as you can see, I mean, think about the content that you already know and looking at embedding, taking this pre-assessment. Yeah, it was sneaky. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Exactly. Awesome. But I just want you to know, and Emily's going to go through a number of other curricular materials and tools that you can modify and adjust depending upon how much time you have. So if you go to the next slide, I also wanted to mention some of our professional development materials, because these are incredible resources that you can use at any time to increase your knowledge on a number of issues. And I just wanted to throw out and mention, we do have an introduction to out-of-school youth that talks about what their needs are, their unique needs, really looking at how to support them, how to identify them, how to recruit them, and how to connect that to services. The other really important piece is we know that all our programs can benefit from successful and authentic engagement with students, right? But there's also specific approaches that you can take and your programs can take to improve student engagement. And so what we've done is we've designed a tool, OSY relationship building and OSY engagement, the importance of mentoring. And this defines 10 best practices. And it's all done, and this is for practitioners. So this is for service providers, this is for recruiters to take a look at these 10 best practices and to gauge where you are. So there's a reflective piece to this, to really look at how are you supporting your students, your out-of-school youth, and you can take out-of-school youth out of this and just apply this to any migrant student or family, because the same 10 best practices are good for any relationship building. So I really encourage you to take a look at that. And then the last two pieces I want to mention in terms of professional learning deal with SLIFE, with students with limited interrupted formal education. And this also ties into looking at how we determine their learning level and their needs, curriculum, best instructional practices, and then finally, growth mindset. Growth mindset, I think we all need this. This is about how we can help our migrant students succeed, but I think this is great for all of us to look at and really look at how we apply a growth mindset to our work. The last thing I wanted to mention is we are in development of what we're calling STAT lessons, short, targeted, and timely. These will address the limited instructional time that is the reality of recruiters and service providers. It's very practical and relevant to the needs of migrant students. It has a standard lesson plan template. It targets basic vocabulary. There's lots of interactive tools like Quizlet, Edpuzzle, practice activities, and pre and post assessments. The lessons that we're currently working on are going through the drive-through fast food ordering, work vocabulary, working on a dairy farm, and directions. So we should be on the lookout for all of this. And you could ask questions whenever at the end, but I want Emily to have the opportunity to dig into the materials.
Good stuff, y'all. So we're going to kind of be just going through by age bracket pretty much. And I'm going to be talking both about iSOSY materials that you can use, but also just like random things that you can do that maybe y'all are already doing in your states. And again, I'd be glad to hear either at the end or as we go along, if you want to add things in the chat that your state's already doing or techniques maybe that I'm missing. So one of the biggest things that I could definitely suggest doing that we do a lot in South Carolina is to collaborate with your local Head Start. So we actually have an MOU with our the South Carolina division of the East Coast Migrant Head Start Project. So they actually collect COEs for us on their families that qualify for our program as well. It's a really, really, really great partnership. Just as far as physical in-person logistics go, sometimes if they're trying to open up a center, around the same time that we're trying to get maybe kids ready for a summer program or something like that, we'll go out with each other and help, they'll train me real quick on how to do some of their basic paperwork. We get them to know how to do some of our basic stuff. And so we'll go out together and team recruit, right? Because a lot of times you'll have maybe somebody who's got a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old. We've got the older kids, they've got the younger kids, and we can kind of team up that way. We also get them to invite us at the end of the summer. They have a transition to kindergarten event. So that's usually a really great time for them they usually invite some sort of local, principal or something where maybe a lot of the students might be transferring to hypothetically in the fall. But they also usually get us to come and we talk to the parents about working with the kids once they get to the public school, even though we do serve 3 and up. It's a really, really great way for them to kind of know hey, okay, so you're going from this world of the Head Start project, right, which is much smaller. Everybody there is bilingual, or most people there are bilingual, and they're kind of able to really handhold you through a lot of stuff. And now you're going to be in the big public school, or maybe your kid, instead of being one of 30 or 50 or 100, is going to be one of hundreds. And, you might feel a little bit lost. So who can you kind of look for when you're going? And even if you're talking about families that move a lot, who can you be looking for as you go from state to state? Contact your local migrant program. Your local migrant program will get you plugged into your resources. We'll get you plugged in as you're going from state to state. So it's a really, really nice time because the East Coast folks already have that great relationship with the students and the families. Then it's a nice time for us to be able to kind of come in and remind them that they're part of this larger migrant ed network. I know this has to happen in other states other than just South Carolina, right? A lot of times if you ask any of our parents, like, are you in the migrant education program? They'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you tell, but if you say, programita de la escuela con la señora Emily, like with, the school with Emily and whoever it is they know, then they're like, oh yeah, that thing, right? So this is another good time just to kind of drill in, again, this idea that they are part of by being in this program, they're actually part of a larger network of support, even if they don't necessarily realize that. And some of our families definitely realize that. Another nice thing that you can do with them, if you're, say, not in an area where you have a Head Start project that you can either collaborate with, or even if you are collaborating with one like we do, obviously they don't serve every single town in South Carolina. A really nice and simple activity that you can do is reading a book with the kids and or the parents at the time of recruitment. I'm not saying that I do this every time I go recruit. There are plenty of times when mom's bouncing a baby on one hip and she's trying to cook dinner and the other kids are running around my feet and whatever. And, if I were to be like, let's all stop and read a book, everybody would be like, please leave our home. You're driving us crazy. So you have to definitely read the room, know when's the right time. If this is a good time, it could be a good time to sit down and be like, hey, I've got this book for you. Do we have a second? Maybe we can read either through it or read a couple pages of it. It's a really great time for you to talk to the parents about the importance of reading. If the parent is very low literacy or not literate at all, we have some books that either have very few words or don't have any words at all in them. And so we'll read that with the family and kind of talk about ideas, maybe how they can invent stories to go along with what they're reading. Or we can even talk about, tell them stories about where you're from, traditional stories from your hometown. Tell them what you're doing. Like, now I'm making the tortillas and this is how we do it. All of that is really, really great early childhood stuff. And if you kind of help the parents by facilitating a little session like that and sort of training them, right, to be the child's first teacher, you can definitely count that as a service.
There are
Helping-
also, Emily, if I can
Go ahead.
just jump in, I was going to say
Please.
there are also some really wonderful apps that will read, they'll show the book on the screen and the book will move forward, the pages will move forward, and you could put it into different languages. I know Starfall is a really great, I believe it is a free app too. So you can even engage with parents using a tool like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great point. Helping them to enroll at a local pre-K program. Now, again, we're talking about services at recruitment, right? So that might look like you just happen to have the phone number and the information of how to get there. So you might have to take a few minutes to sit down and be like, okay, this is who you need to call. This is what's going to happen. If you get there and things kind of go downhill because they're not, doing their part to translate for you at the time, this is who you can call. If it's you or if it's somebody else on your team, maybe they might be able to call and offer, even if they can't physically go down to the school, that they could hop on the phone real quick and talk to somebody at the front desk to say, hey, don't forget, you got to use that language line. This is what you have to do to help enroll these families. So having that information, even just ready to go, being like human Google, very helpful. Advocacy, again, services around WIC and SNAP services where available and relevant. Maybe they don't realize that they can apply for those services. Maybe they just need to know where to apply. And again, that's where it's helpful for you to be able to say, okay, you can apply during, between these hours and these hours at this place. This is what they're going to say, kind of almost run them through, so you're going to go up to the front desk and somebody's going to say this and somebody's going to say that. All of those kind of services are really, they're not super academic, but again, they can be extremely helpful for our families. Another thing to keep an eye out for, sometimes the parents of our preschoolers are OSY themselves, right? How often that happens to us fairly often, which is another great reason to work with the Head Start, is maybe the Head Start wants to do, some parenting classes in the evening, and some of their parents are also our OSY in addition to being parents. We're kind of able to, several birds with one stone. Maybe we do a little mini series on learning English and banking and budgeting or something like that. Then our OSY are getting services, parents are getting services, indirectly benefit the kids. It can be a really great relationship. Even though everything on iSOSY is sort of geared around OSY and at-risk secondary students, a lot of the materials are relevant for any student, or you can make it relevant to any stage of life, right? So again, even if maybe you don't have an OSY who's a parent, some of this information is still very helpful. I took a screenshot and it is hyperlinked. So whenever y'all get the PowerPoint later, you can go and find it. But looking at traveling by car with your baby, taking care of yourself during pregnancy, labor and delivery, my baby's almost here, and taming the TV monster, we in South Carolina have like kind of modified in our state the taming the TV monster to be more about like taming the iPad monster or even the cell phone monster. But it's a really great tool to kind of have those conversations with parents about, the importance of limiting screen time with the kids when they're little, and talking about, what kind of things are safe for them to watch, what kind of things maybe aren't a good idea for them to watch. Yes, you can find stuff that's academic, but sometimes it's just as good to give them a book or just let them play with their imaginations in the living room, right? So having these sort of materials, we can do these, and they have like pre and post tests and whatnot that you can do. And again, like it's literally broken down for you. Like, this is your warm up activity. This is the main meat of what you're doing. Even if you can't do the whole thing, maybe you're just going to pick and choose, a little bit out of that session. So that's extremely helpful. And then anytime that you can bring a food box, I know that's kind of tricky. We have, some food banks that are pretty good about, they know me and they'll take my word for it, or maybe they ask me to fill out any sort of like demographic information about families that I'm giving the food boxes to, but they'll let me come and pick up the food box. I don't have to bring the family in with me. Not all of them for sure, but I've managed to make a relationship, and some of our recruiters and liaisons have as well. And even if it's just 1 or 2 food pantries, they'll let you do it. It's extremely helpful to have that also, at hand, that you can hand somebody like, hey, how's it going? Here's some food. Let's talk a little bit about nutrition, right? Anything you can do to tie it in to service. I mean, you'll see some of these strategies repeated slide after slide because they're just, universally helpful. And just FYI too, I don't know if I said it this at the beginning, but all of the pictures that we're using are all actually from South Carolina and Kansas's migrant program, obviously with the permission of the folks photographed. So if you've got elementary school age kids that you're working with, flashcards. Flashcards are surprisingly simple either to make or to find. That's a pretty easy one that you can either find on like local mommy and me, whatever kind of pages where people maybe are giving away gently used things. It's a pretty easy thing if somebody's like, oh, we want to help, but we're not exactly like primed, this women's group, whatever, isn't exactly primed to like come out of the fields and help. Get them to give you flashcards. It's even really great if it's flashcards and the language the parent can understand. Like if you have a parent that's more educated and maybe they do know their basic timetables or something like that, but even if they don't, you can sit down, either like, do flashcards that are like matching, like a picture with a name. That's an easy activity that you can do with the kids, and then show mom and dad how to do it, show it as an it's an academic game, but you just tell the kids that it's a game. And so then they actually are doing a little bit of learning while playing, right? So that's really important and really easy and very portable. So when you're talking about families, who are going to be going all up and down the East Coast, you're like, hey, y'all can practice these flashcards in the car. Like I said, you can do it for math, you can do it for language, you can just use it for like memory games. There's a lot of different directions you can go in with flashcards. There's these really, really great materials on the iSOSY website that is for reading and math. It's called Reading and Math on the Move. I don't have any formal teaching experience. I've gotten to learn a lot by working, around educators and with education about early childhood education and about, how to plan a lesson and whatnot, just kind of by default, but I don't have any formal training in it. So if I'm, for some reason, I'm trying to help some kid with like algebra homework or supposed to be tutoring them in something, I really rely on somebody else having thought through a lesson plan for them. That's what's really nice to me about the Reading and Math on the Move materials is A, they're free, and B, they go through and they break down everything for you. They went ahead and figured out like what are the what the different names are and like who's, or like, what's the answer is going to be and like what should it look like and whatnot. So you don't have to worry about getting that information correct or not.
And I was going to jump in and say they're non-sequential, so you don't have to use all their 24 lessons each. You don't have to use all of the lessons. You really can pinpoint particular skills that students need. So if you haven't ever used them, I would jump in and just take a look. We also have, if you want to focus on writing, there is an additional resource called Write On, which goes along with reading and math on the move. So I would check that out too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thanks for jumping in with that, Tracy, that's a really good point that you don't have to do any of these in any particular order. If you just wanted to have like kind of one or two, one off. I mean, I saw in the comments in the chats, somebody was talking about doing the Dolly's Imagination Library. You know, not all of our kids obviously are going to live in a place where they can access those kind of materials. Maybe they move too much. Maybe they live in an area where the Imagination Library doesn't deliver. But even if you just sign up one family for it, that's huge, right? That's some kids getting some more books, you know, kind of sitting down and explaining to mom and dad, like why they're going to be getting these books, why it's important for the kids to read the books and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really good suggestion. Again, we're back to referrals to those needs of the community. So having not only placing a referral, but making sure that you schedule follow-up for it. I found that that's really key, because maybe you call mom or dad to say like, hey, did you end up taking the kids to the dentist? And they say like, oh, fíjate que, you know, anytime something starts with fíjate que, you know, it's about to go downhill. But they tell you like, oh, well, you know, actually we didn't go yet because we weren't really sure, or we lost the information that you gave us, or, you know, whatever it is. And so you being able to follow up, and again, I know that's not necessarily the time of recruitment, but it doesn't just you following up. You could like call them on your way to or from something else, especially if you have that information at the hand to resend them, or to say like, okay, well, when y'all go tomorrow, if you have any trouble at the front desk, just give me a call. So it doesn't really require you going back out, and it doesn't take up that much of your time, relatively speaking, but then the family still feels supported by you and by the by your, you know, whatever group y'all are, if you're state run or service community center, whatever. Helping with homework while you're there, maybe. Again, it's not like a good like long-term solution for kids who have homework issues, but while you're there, if they've got, you know, 15, 20 minutes, you can say like, hey, how's it going with your homework? Show me what you're working on. You can kind of get like an idea of what's going on with them. Again, it gives you that buy-in with the parents. Like, okay, she seems to have some clue about something, since she knows to ask for homework, or she knows how to look through this. You know, maybe you can look through the book with them, or look through the things and tell mom and dad like, hey, did you realize you're getting this information from the teacher? You know, and there are so many reasons why, you know, if they're not getting the information in the language they understand, now you've got something else to follow up on, that you're like, okay, yeah, they're sending home stuff in a language the parents don't understand. That's a problem. We're gonna have to get back with school about that one. Or maybe you find that like, okay, yeah, they are sending it in the language they understand, but mom and dad can't read or write. So again, that might be something that we need to bring up with the school. Or maybe mom and dad do know how to read and write. They are getting it in their language, but they just don't have that cultural understanding of maybe looking through the kids' binder or whatever it is in that school's dynamic. Again, that's something that's helpful pretty much for any age, but especially when you're talking about like preschool, elementary, even middle schoolers to some degree, just because that personal responsibility, you can only ask so much of a 7-year-old, right? And all the more important we found with everything being online right now, it's been extremely important to try to figure some of that out with mom and dad while you're there. Yeah, some districts have a list of tutors that do tutoring or offer homework assistance, and maybe the families don't realize that that's a resource available to them. So you might take a little bit of time to sit down with mom and dad and show them how to access a resource like that. And again, that is a really important long-term service, even if it's not super academic, that you can provide as a recruiter on the spot. Again, referring them to other resources in the area, like we were saying, that there's like an after school program they didn't realize they could sign up for. And again, with the food box, right? Nobody dislikes it when you show up with a little bit of free food, even if it's just kind of pantry staples. That's another easy one that if you get like a church or some other civic group that wants to donate things, you can be like, hey, if y'all can just kind of at any time, you know, have me ready some boxes with some basics that are culturally relevant to whatever population you're serving. So like we usually do like beans, rice, instant coffee, some fresh fruits and vegetables. That can get kind of tricky just because those expire sooner, but especially if you're talking about pantry, you know, staples, those are really, really important ones. Again, middle schoolers, a lot of the same kind of stuff, food boxes, homework help, again, with the math and reading on the move, especially as you're starting to get up into those higher levels of classes. They might need a little bit of extra help in that. Writing skills, Tracy already talked a little bit about that, but that is also a really helpful one where they've got some writing prompts already kind of thought out for you and some reasoning behind it, which is, again, if you're like me and you don't have a lot of experience working with formal education like that, it can be extremely, extremely helpful to have a writing prompt, something that you know that, okay, we're going to write about this. They can maybe you can have several kids writing at the same time. And then you kind of are able to help guide them through that. Maybe you read over it, go over some of the basic grammar mistakes maybe that you notice. It's a really good jumping off point. Again, I realize that like this is not the best long-term solution, but as far as providing an on-the-spot service that can be extremely helpful. Again, with the referrals to the community resources, as they're starting to get older too, when they're in middle school, there might even be some sort of like club at the school that they could join, or even sport or something like that. Maybe they're not aware that they can still join in on that, or that those things exist at their school. And again, that's where it's really helpful for you to do a little bit of that pre-knowledge beforehand. And I mean, it certainly has happened to me before, where I signed up a kid at some school that I'm like, I honestly don't know anything about this school. I'm not even 100% sure where the school is. And that happens, but you can either do a real quick Google yourself, or you can at least promise to follow back up with services later. But again, it's where it's really helpful if at the time you kind of know, okay, they're still letting people sign up. If they're McKinney-Vento, at least in South Carolina, if they qualify for the McKinney-Vento programs, they'll usually waive the like late, sign up rules. So like if maybe they had to sign up for soccer by October or whatever, and you sign this kid up and you find them in November, if they're also McKinney-Vento, which not all migrant students are McKinney-Vento, but a lot of them are, you might also be able to help with that kind of advocacy, maybe where the kid's like, oh, I really want to sign up for soccer, or they told me it was too late. You might be able to say like, well, let me call the school tomorrow, because I'm pretty sure that they might be able to make an exception since you're in our program, whatever. And then you can kind of talk to the school about like, hey, let Mario sign up for soccer. They just got here, they're in the McKinney-Vento program, and able to provide some advocacy. Again, not a super academic service, but as far as the kids' like long-term happiness at the school, even if they are only going to be there for a few months, that can make a huge difference. And again, really give you that buy-in with the families and students about like, oh my gosh, that was actually really helpful. Thank you. We needed that, right? Books or science kits that community members can donate. That's also a really fun and easy way, to get people from the community who want to help but maybe aren't sure how. And it's pretty universal. You can look up different science kits. Some of them will send them to you for free anyway. But if the companies themselves won't send them for free, if there's one that you can even get people to buy for you to bring out, and you can spend a little bit of time kind of explaining the kit to the kid, or explaining the books to the kids, or some other kind of STEAM kit, if they have those in your area, can also count as some sort of academic service. And again, it's like fun, not that complicated for you to do on the spot. And again, advocate and follow up, schedule yourself to follow up. I literally have to go back and put something on my calendar that says like, call the whoever family about the dentist, on Friday or something like that. Especially if I tell them like, hey, I'm going to follow up with you sometime this week about, how accessing this service might do. Again, I just can't quite emphasize enough how important that advocacy referral piece with that follow-up behind it can be a bit overwhelming. I know that recruiters and other service providers, we already have a lot on our plates, but I find that if I can stay on top of it and organized, that advocacy with the follow-up piece are extremely helpful both to me and to our families. High schoolers, again, we're going through a lot of the same information over and over and over again, but just to emphasize the importance of it, again, if you can get that food box to them, that homework help, again, with the math and reading on the move, you can find stuff that's extremely relevant to them. The writing skills, again, the referrals to the community resources. There's also some really great material on the OSY website that's called Acres. I don't know how many of y'all are maybe familiar with using Acres or not. And Tracie, I don't know if you wanted to say something about Acres.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say it stands for Academic and Career Readiness Skills. And it is divided into emphasizing skill development and reading and math, career readiness, and we have some study skill focused lessons.
Very helpful, right? So these are all things that are academically inclined, but also just good. I mean, I'm all about anything that involves like a life skill, especially when you start talking about those high schoolers who maybe aren't like, honestly, Emily, I'm really not that excited about, my algebra class or whatever. But if you're able to tie it into something of like, all right, that's okay, but hey, here's how this is still relevant to you. Here's some other kind of life skill stuff. You say you want to be a welder and graduate and open your own shop. Like, that's awesome. Here's still some materials that might be relevant to you that you don't think of as being, school and academic and whatnot, but again, still counts as a service for us and will actually be helpful long run for that kid. And that kid is more likely to engage with you the next time you see them because they feel like they got a little bit of support about something that they were interested in. And then,
Emily, hold on.
Yeah.
Daniel asked a question about any info or resources for GED. We're
Okay.
working on that right now since we have just expanded our focus to include those secondary students at risk of dropping out. But any of the reading and math and writing materials were actually designed to support skill development and preparation for HEP, for GED. So those are all considered our pre-high SED materials. So I would go there.
Oh yeah, and that's true. I didn't even think to put that on the on this high school thing. But if you have HEP or HEP or even camp programs in your state, that's really awesome. We do not have any HEPs in South Carolina, which is probably why I forgot to link it or to talk about that resource. But yeah, that's huge. If you can refer one of your kids into that program, again, I'm pretty sure you can get some kind of credit for having linked one of your students to those programs, and they are still then they're still getting those services, right? Which is like really long-term important, both for the for the good of those students and for the good of your program, because then you get a good reputation in the community as like actually being helpful, actually having gotten their kids into something that's long-term helpful for them. So you don't have to be a HEP program. If you can find a HEP and just get the kid into the HEP program, then two birds with one stone, much easier, right? So thanks for that. There's also some really great material on the OSY website about goal setting that I find is helpful. Even, yes, transportation issues. That is always in the chat. Somebody had said that they have a HEP program, but it's far, and the transportation logistics issues. And that is a thing that it'll be interesting, I think, to see if as we go on with in this brave new world of online stuff, and a lot of online stuff doesn't work for our students, but it will be interesting to see if and when, if a lot of these programs just kind of stick with doing online stuff, because maybe they have been able to get at least some of the kids who maybe have enough self-discipline to go online, even if they can't get themselves transported to class. It'll be interesting to see if like they continue to offer either some sort of hybrid model where you can do, or like, if you can get yourself here, here's the in-person class. If you can't get yourself here, but you can get yourself on the internet, here's some online materials. I'm pretty sure they do that up in like the New England has a HEP program that's mostly virtual. I know Vermont actually somehow they managed to pull off a good bit of virtual instruction for OSY and even like high school students. So that's pretty cool.
Just to also take a look at goal setting, I know Josiah posted some good resources. And I know that Emily also mentioned the webinar that Deke Showman and Josiah Long did for iSOSY. It is still on our website, and it's very valuable because it walks you through how to connect initial services and goal setting in a process, and to do it virtually as well. So I would encourage you to take a look at that.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, since we seem to be transportation and time after work are usually the main issues with servicing OSY. That is very true, Maria. And hey, Maria. And actually, since we're like clipping along at a decent speed, I actually might take us off of this PowerPoint for a brief moment just to show you that OSY material and show right here. Go on to the goal setting stuff on the OSY migrant page. So if you haven't been on here before, you can go onto the practitioner. And this is, like where you can find a lot of these instructional resources. And I really, again, encourage you like in your own time to go through and find some of these resources bit by bit. But if you go into the goal setting, it looks a little bit intimidating at first, not gonna lie to you. But they have both an instructor's guide and the goal setting rubric and then the student books. If you just take like a little bit of time to go through those, we have them like in English and in Spanish. There's even like kind of an eval that goes along with it. You've got like your plans, your tools, and all that kind of stuff. And this is actually a really nice, again, it's not going to work with all of your students. You're not going to be able to do all of the goal setting stuff, but you can even go through and just cherry pick. I'm all about cherry picking and just kind of getting things together that maybe, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. What can we make work for us?
And to jump in, it's divided into activities. So it's divided into 6 main activities: developing a vision. I mean, if you open it up, why don't you open it up, Emily, and we can take them to the table of contents. You're not going to do this in one sitting. This is something that can be easily chunked into much smaller increments. And everything is here for you, how to do it one-on-one. Okay, slow down. group setting or virtually. So if you look even at activity 1, it goes into discovering our vision. This is such a powerful activity. It's a great icebreaker activity with new students. It's great to even take a look at with your existing students, really focusing in on what their goals are, and then documenting that vision, setting long and short-term goals, mapping out the way, because we know if we can teach transportable skills in regard to overcoming barriers along the road to accomplishing our goals, that is so incredibly powerful for our students. And as Emily noted, it is overwhelming, but the idea is you chunk it and you do smaller pieces. So this may be something that as a recruiter, you might want to start with activity 1 and then hand it off to whoever the long-term service provider is. But they're really great activities. I use them quite frequently. I use them with a lot of adults that I train as well, and it's worked out great. So take a look at that.
And like Tracie was mentioning, thank you for going over that, Tracie. There, we also have it broken down by activity name and sort of a description. So if you're kind of like having that moment when you're getting ready to go out there, when you're like, oh, I kind of want to like work on this thing. I can't remember though, like what it was about or whatever, you can kind of scan over this and be like, oh, there's something with pennies, penny for your thoughts. Oh, right, the one we use the pennies and the thing, and you know, how much familiarity they already have. Okay, great. I'm doing this virtually. It's on page 47. You can go back up and you can find it. It's a little quick reference for you in case.
Maria, this is on the iSOSY website, and we'll get, I thought it was shared already, but we can do that again. And Josiah, I love your question. Thank you. He asked, are there any ideas in iSOSY to look at developing a simple goal setting interface? Oh, sorry, it moved down. I missed the whole question. No, I think that's a really intriguing idea though. We are in development of a student portal, and that might be an interesting way to house that information there. So thank you for that good idea.
Yeah. In the meantime, we have this very simple and elegant, just a one-pager where you can try to get whenever you're like, if you're the one who starts goal setting with a student, to get them to put like, you know, so if they start with me, you know, my name and information, right? Emily Williams, you know, 80354, whatever, and that I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. And so then hopefully, if they remember, we hope they would get to maybe Pennsylvania, say, and they can hand this to Josiah. And then Josiah's like, Emily, I'm gonna call Emily and be like, where did y'all leave off? Like, what's going on with the goal setting or whatever, in lieu of any sort of app, but an app would be cool. So we'll go from here. Right, so that's again just like one example of a tool that you can really like go through and work on with the students to go along with the goal setting. Again, something that's like fairly light and portable and easy to use that I find helpful both for high schoolers and OSY and parents are agendas and planners, and discussing how to use them is sort of like a life skill kind of lesson, especially if you've got maybe, I don't know how many of you have had those kind of hot mess express, and we'll talk about more of this when we have parents, but like for instance, if you're talking to a high schooler who's maybe kind of struggling to keep on top of their schoolwork and their other activities and other things that they're responsible for, but they're interested and open to the idea of using some sort of tool. And all of these, right, are just ideas. These are not like you have to do all these things when you're at somebody's house. Maybe none of these things will work sometime when you're at their house. These are just other strategies that I've used before that have been helpful. You get them, maybe you have a couple of different, you know, just kind of basic agendas or planners. Maybe they already have one and they just don't really know how to use it or how to maximize their use of it, because sometimes I know the high schools will give students even planners or agendas at the beginning of the school year. Just kind of looking through it with them, kind of showing them how to use it, why is this helpful, how are they already using it, how could they improve their use of it. I would definitely suggest trying to go over an agenda or planner with a student if you haven't already tried that before. I mean, I see somebody wrote something in the chat, but I want to make sure I didn't miss it. But yeah. Somebody asked about materials for OSY. What do you recommend? Is there a website to buy like backpack or supplies related to them OSY? I think the IDRC currently has like little OSY welcome packs. And I want to say, Alex, I don't know if you're still on and you can unmute, but I know that Iowa kind of has like a standard OSY bag. I'm not sure where y'all buy yours. For some of those, why I give them a first aid kit and do a mini lessons on what items are in it and how to properly use them. That's beautiful. That's perfect. I mean, it's pretty easy. We've even gotten, again, like when you're talking about trying to get people to donate stuff. That's a pretty easy one to get churches or other civic groups. You tell we're in the South, keep talking about churches, that folks that you can get to donate things. That's, again, like pretty easy for them to figure out, like, hey, we need, 50 kits, and in each kit, like a toothbrush, toothpaste, like some basic, either hygiene kit or a basic first aid kit, and we can kind of use that to talk to students.
IDRC, we partnered with them last year at the beginning of the pandemic to provide our member states with COVID-19 bags to hand out to OSY. So I know that IDRC still has them, but there is a cost. I just don't recall how much it is, but it's fairly minimal. The other thing is you can get really good deals on backpacks buying in bulk. I know we've done that previously. I can't recall the website, but if you just do a Google, oh, there it is. Thank you, Heather. It's pretty inexpensive. But we always want to make sure we're connecting it. I like the idea that Sarah mentioned, of course, is connecting it to here's a first aid kit and let's show you how to use it and do a lesson on it. So making that connection, I think, is really important. Thank you.
Again, I don't know, Alex, if you were going to try to unmute and tell us about wherever y'all get yours. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so we do get our backpacks from the same website that Heather did mention. And I know IDIC, like Tracy did mention, has backpacks for OSY at a cost. And I believe if you are an IDRC member and you provide a pilot on how you would like to use those backpacks that has not been provided before, you might get those backpack at no cost. So
yeah, if you just go to the IDRC website, you should be able to find that information somewhere on there. That's actually really helpful. We have some of those that we've been piloting this summer. And they also have work gloves in them. And the guy, like especially our H2A, like OSY guys, love the work gloves. I keep getting text messages from them, like WhatsApps or whatever, with pictures of their gloves. And they're like, thanks for the gloves. They're really helpful. I really like them. So that's been nice. We try to, again, do some sort of maybe either pesticide training. Not that I've already get a lot of it, but some sort of training to go along with those materials for sure. But yeah, especially the OSY, they love the gloves. Whatever gloves those are that IDRC got are muy buenos. All right, y'all. So now we're really getting into the meat. Yeah, love the gloves. Yeah, and then there's the website. Thanks, Alex, for throwing that in there. So OSY, obviously everything that's on the iSOSY website is for OSY. And I get really excited about working with OSY. So, this slide will be a little bit longer. But there's so many things you can do to work with OSY. In some ways, like OSY, I find easier to work with than like even the K through 12 kids because of the fact that they're really mobile. They're usually just looking for something like useful, quick. So doing OSY services at the time of recruitment is like a cakewalk. It's the easiest way you can serve them. It's the best way you can serve them. Honestly, they kind of prefer to be served that way, just kind of like on the fly at the time of recruitment. We'll see when we get back to you, right? That it works really, really well, we find. So what we use is we get giant sticky pads, like those, like those giant Post-its. And so then you can leave. It's sweet. Well, obviously we leave the giant sticky pad, classes with the guys, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're gonna leave this for us? And we're like, yeah, it's not that big a deal. You're welcome. So that's a fun and easy way to do a real quick on the spot class. A lot of times what we get, at least in South Carolina, for our OSY tend to be H2A workers, although not exclusively, certainly. So generally speaking, they're really interested in learning English, and not to pigeonhole OSY into learning English. So OSY definitely have a lot, OSY can be kind of conceptualized in a lot of different ways. And not all of them are interested, even if they don't speak English, they might not be interested in learning English, and that's fine. Like, we don't want to pigeonhole them into things, but realistically speaking, a lot of times it is something that they'll ask, like for a quick English class on the fly. So we try to focus. I always tell them like, hey, we're not gonna, obviously if you ask them like, what do you want to learn? A lot of times they'll just kind of stare at you like, I don't know. So we try to have some ideas off the top of our head of things that maybe would be helpful. Sometimes I'll like throw a little bit of English at them just to kind of see where they are as far as even, not even as a pre and post test, but just as a way to kind of gauge whether or not what I'm about to teach them will be too easy or too hard. So we try to focus on useful phrases that they need, like ordering food. So I would like, and then you can tell them like, hey, listen, I know we use this for ordering at McDonald's, but honestly, you can use this anytime, right? I would like to know more about this. I would like this. I would like to order this food. I would like to access this service. I would like to take a day off. I would like to go to the doctor, right? You can use it for pretty much anything. And even just like simple phrases like please and thank you and my name is, all that kind of stuff can be extremely helpful for OSY. Sometimes, like last Sunday, I was out teaching an OSY group and they were pretty nice. So you can, you have to kind of gauge the crowd for sure and make sure that you're not about to like just really cross over a line. And I know I'm like going on record here saying this, but like if they want to chat with you about like, hey, how can I like say make friends or say ask a girl out on a date, you can kind of cross that, tiptoe that line like, okay, well, this is how you would politely ask, like, I would like to go out with you. We're going to get some days of the week, some hours, right? That's a lot of good vocabulary right there. And they might be a little bit more incentive, they have that kind of incentive to talk about it as long as you kind of maybe lay out some ground rules. You can get even in some like cultural information about like, hey, this is how it would be if you were to ask a girl out in the United States, or like, this is age appropriate dynamics in the United States as far as who's allowed to ask out who and whatnot. A lot of good information can come out of that. We also oftentimes do how US money works. So stuff like pennies, nickels, dimes, that sort of thing. That's actually what in this picture that we're looking at of one of our interns from a couple of years ago. We were out at some random motel in Florence, South Carolina. And so she was teaching the guys. I mean, as you can see, this is pretty simple, right? Like we're literally out in the abandoned pool area of this bad motel in Florence. And she's just on the fly kind of showing them how do quarters work, how do pennies work, how many pennies do you need to get in a quarter, and how much is it worth, and all that kind of stuff. Because we get that a lot with the guys will say, like, I just went, I gave somebody some money, I just hope they'll give me the right amount of change back, just kind of blindly trusting. So that's always a good one. And yeah. Then you always use interns because they're really, really, I could like do a whole presentation just on using interns. Interns are really great because one, they tend to be like similar ages as the guys you're, is like the OSY, which can be good and can be bad. Again, you definitely want to lay down some ground rules at the beginning of the summer about like, who are you allowed to date? Are you not allowed to date? How close can you become with people? Are you going to give out your personal phone numbers? All that kind of stuff. So you definitely, I know there's like internal, your own state decisions, but I would suggest laying down those laws at the beginning. But otherwise, it's a really, really, really great fit. Interns tend to be happy to work, for the majority of the summer. They're, especially if you're getting them from another state or like they live in your, maybe you're getting them from the local university. They tend to enjoy going out late and not having to get up very early. So most of our interns follow a schedule of like 2 p.m. to midnight, 4 days a week or something like that. And then I just check on with them like, at the end of their week for a couple hours in the morning just to see kind of like if there's any information they need or how they're doing. But you can then teach them both to recruit and to serve OSY and just kind of have them focused on that all the time. And then you're also getting services done in the summer, which is really important for funding. And then interns, usually you can either negotiate some sort of like per diem or like scholarship at the end of the summer if they complete their internship. Either with your state or through some other organization, maybe, especially if your state does have a camp program. A lot of times those camp kids already know so much about the farm worker world. All you have to do is just teach them a little bit about like state specific on how to fill out the COE, what kind of services they're allowed to do or are going to be asked to do and stuff like that. But as far as like teaching them about farm workers, about what, kind of issues they're going to face or see or be assisting people with, language, culture, a lot of times they already have that under wraps. You don't even have to worry about that. And like I said, they don't mind going out late. They don't mind kind of driving all over the place, especially if you can send them out in pairs. They might even be able to get like an academic credit for it if maybe you're not a summer state, but you're talking about like during the school year. So they might be able to come out and even just work like 10 hours a week or something for you all throughout one semester. Maybe they can get some class credit for it. Maybe your state can afford to give them like gas mileage. So it's kind of a win-win-win as far as everybody's concerned. When you're working with OSY, try to get them plugged into whatever social media you have and make a WhatsApp group. So we always make a WhatsApp group where we're like, put our, we're very fortunate in South Carolina that we have separate work numbers than our personal numbers, which is really nice. So we have WhatsApp groups. So I'll like definitely get all the OSY that I signed up, their numbers, and make a little WhatsApp group. I usually name the WhatsApp group whatever their address is, A, so that I can remember where they live and which group it is, and B, it's a very alarming amount of guys who don't know where they live. So then they also learn about where they are in the world. And so then you can also though tell other folks, at that camp, like, hey, I'm going to start this group with these other guys, but like, here's my phone number, text me or WhatsApp me if you want to be added to the group, and I can add you to the group. This same group actually in Florence, they were really cute because they were like really serious about the classes, which is kind of unusual. And they're like, no, like we're not going to put any dumb memes in this WhatsApp group, right, guys? Like this is just for like learning and stuff. And so even though they ended up moving before we could get back out there to do another class, but I still would like send them the occasional video, send them like the OSY, the iSOSY website and all that kind of stuff. So that's always a really, really fun way to keep them plugged in. Also, we just started a Facebook during the pandemic. Sort of one of our small silver linings was that our state allowed us to get a Facebook. So now we also do English classes on Sunday nights, every Sunday night, every Sunday night at 7, just for like 5 to 20 minutes, kind of depending on what the material is. And so like if you get, say, one of your OSY to like interact about it, you see that they like it, maybe you can message them later and like ask if they liked it. What all did they learn? You might count it as a service. But at the very least, they kind of at least see that you're like legit, that you're real, and that's kind of a way to keep engaging with them, even if maybe they've moved back to Mexico, but the year when they come back, whatever. Letting those older kids participate, as you can probably tell in this picture, some of these guys are OSY and some of them are not. And that's okay, because you're already there anyway. You might as well let them participate, because then it's actually more likely to, we find that the younger guys will participate if the older guys are interested and the older guys are participating. That's a really, really great tool, both for recruiting and for services. If I'm out there and I'm talking to a guy, who's like, oh, we really want y'all to teach class. Can y'all stay? Whatever. But maybe they're, I ask them how old they are and they're like 30 or something, so they don't qualify. I'll say like, hey, if you can go find me though, all the guys who are between the ages of like, whatever, 18, 17, whatever this group is going to be, and 22, we'll sign them up and then we can stay and do a class and all of you can participate. So they're going out, they're finding all the young guys. They're like, aren't you young? Get over here. Let this woman sign you up. So they're really, really helpful recruiting tools. Find some of those older guys, or at least they'll animate, they'll try to like encourage those younger guys to sign up, because they're like, no, this would be really helpful, they'll really like it, I wish that I had taken these classes when I was younger, or whatever. So yeah, definitely lean on those older guys to participate and to help you recruit. And just generally, I always pretend like I'm still working at a bar and I just ID everybody who's under 30. I don't actually ID them, but I always ask them, like, if they look under 30, how old they are, just on the off chance some of the OSY look older than they really are. One of the really, really great resources that the OSY, that iSOSY has on the website, and literally everything is for OSY, but one really great one is English for Daily Life. There you can find a lot of different resources about just like really quick English classes that are going to be extremely relevant. They're not like particularly academic per se, but they'll be extremely relevant to their everyday life, which is really nice. There are also things that even if you don't have time to sit down and do all of them with the OSY, you could sit down and at least show them how to access it on their phone and kind of help them troubleshoot through it. And then that way they can kind of study on their own. And again, that kind of re-emphasizes for them. It makes them feel less like a child who's going to school and more like, hey, you're an adult and you're just going to be learning English on your own.
And with English for Daily Life, it tackles 6 different areas, and they're all really simple, important, and it was selected by students. So one, for example, is on shopping, how to go to a grocery store, how to make change, how to find food. There's vocabulary lists. There's so much embedded within them that you can do very quickly, but there's a lot of follow-up that a student can do on their own. For example, we have one section on emergencies, and at the height of the pandemic, one of the audio portions of English for Daily Life on emergencies was accessed over 1,000 times by actual migrant students. So it's really been quite popular. It's very easy to use. So I would love to see you check it out.
Yeah, thanks for a little extra plug. And again, you can use that goal setting material. A lot of, if you want to get away from the whole OSY, always wanting to learn English bit, they might have goals and plans. A lot of those OSY we work with have goals and plans that aren't necessarily academic, but maybe they're saving up to open a business, they're finishing the construction of their home. Maybe they, again, if they have kids, maybe they have kind of plans for their kids. So going through and picking some stuff from those goal setting workshops can also be a really fun way to engage with your OSY who maybe otherwise like wouldn't really want to talk, like maybe they're not that interested in learning English, but they would like love to talk to you about sort of their plans to open, when they get back to home country, to open this business, to finish building their house. You can kind of talk about, setbacks and how they're going to deal with that sort of thing. Maybe you get to do a little bit of budgeting. There's a lot of really good, I use the life skills all the time. GoSOSY has a lot of really, I mean, just like an absurd amount, y'all, of information about life skills. So I would definitely suggest checking that out as well for your OSY. Like I say, literally anything on OSYmigrant.org is going to be useful for you. Also the audio files. So there are a bunch of audio files that have corresponding books. So if you have the money for it, you can also like print out little booklets that correspond to the audio files. And God, at the very least, you can do the audio files. We usually download them onto either little US like MP3 players, which are like a little bit out of date, but at least you have them right there, and the guy's got them. Or you can put them on the little chips that then they can put into their phones, and then they can listen to the classes and like while they're out at work or while they're out and about. A lot of them, I think some of them are actually read by Jessica Casiniello, so that's cool. But it's nice because then they get to like hear different accents, and they have plenty of chances to practice saying things. The audio resources, if I'm correct, are all in English and Spanish, so we don't have them in English and other languages, but they could still like practice their English even if they don't have that translation piece. But it is extremely helpful if it's an OSY who is a Spanish speaker, because then they also get that kind of confirmation where they're translating things back and forth between English and Spanish, and so they can like hear pronunciations. I know that's really big for a lot of our students. They're like, well, I'm fairly confident listening and even reading stuff, but kind of like having that pronunciation practice, which can be hard, right, if you can't come out and do a class on the regular. So having them have those audio resources where they can kind of listen to it and rewind and try again and practice saying it out loud themselves. And that's an easy thing for you to load up. I always just have a bunch of those loaded up and ready to go. I try not to leave them in my car in the summer. So you'll have to, because it's really hot down here in South Carolina, so y'all have to think about that in your own states about maybe what time of year would not be good to leave those little electronics in your car all the time. But more or less, I just keep a bunch of those audio files in my little outreach bag at all times, just in case I'm signing up an OSY. And even if you can pull it off, getting a variety of books in the languages that your OSY might speak. So again, you might do one, like we did like the Cuatro Cuerdos or something like that, and a couple other just like novels. So even if they're reading in their home language, and again, this is kind of like state specific about whether or not you can do that kind of thing. That's a really nice, I mean, not all of our OSY are that academically inclined, but sometimes they are. Like they really are big readers in their home country, and they just like miss having something. I know I would be really bummed if I was in a foreign country and didn't have any books in my language that I could read in my spare time. So even if you just have like 5 or 10 of those books rattling around in your car on the off chance you meet an OSY who would be interested in that, that's a really, really lovely gift they really appreciate. And even books on like basic home repair instructions and stuff like that. My husband did a lot of that for a long time, so he's got like 8 million books about it. So that can be really nice for your OSY, especially if like they're not H2A or they're part of some maybe undocumented crew, or they are like a recent high school dropout who's just interested in kind of taking care of their home or something like that. That's kind of like weird off, like not something you would necessarily think about, but if you can actually give them that and they can kind of like look through it and you can talk about it and kind of maybe explain some of it to them or how to use that home repair instruction book, that is also like a long-term extremely helpful thing for them that they like weirdly appreciate that you wouldn't really think about using. So there's that. And then parents, right? So we kind of talked about parents through when we're talking about OSY, and we're kind of talking about them like the whole way through, right? But here are just some ideas of how you can sign up people and do a service at the same time. So we try to collaborate from time to time when we can, and it's been harder with COVID and everything, to do mobile classrooms. So like if we know, and again in South Carolina we have a lot of like camps where like a bunch of workers come and are like temporary living and sort of these traditional Grapes of Wrath style camps. And you can get other service providers to come out with you. It's kind of it's a good recruiting activity. And then it's also good to have services right there. So maybe a bunch of people are going to be offering like basic health screenings, some foods, clothes, and like just community resources. So then the parents can kind of like almost like a fair can go from like table to table, learn about some different resources in the area. I usually volunteer to help like be at the beginning of the table where you're signing people up, because then you can be like, what's your name? What's your age? You know, and so you're already kind of getting some of this, you know, how many kids do you have? So you're already kind of asking them a bunch of questions anyway, and you can quickly be like, cool, let me sign you up for our program real quick, you know, get that COE going. And if not, if for some reason they don't qualify for the program because it's like a seasonal farm worker or they're like by themselves or too old to be an OSY, you know, you got to sign them up. You know, you might have to get some basic demographic information anyway for these other organizations. I mean, that's a really, really good place to put one of your recruiters and to have them helping out with that, as opposed to necessarily having like a migrant ed booth. If you can kind of be at the sign up table, it's actually a very helpful place to be. Again, with the referrals and follow-ups, parents really appreciate it if you follow up with those referrals. There's a lot of information on the OSY migrant website, like I was talking about with parenting, the food boxes, the advocacy. Again, just remember that some of your parents are also OSYs. You can kind of two birds with one stone it there, getting them plugged in with your social media. Like I said, we are using our social media to do like the English classes for the OSY, but we also advertise a lot of different information for families. We've done a couple of videos, you know, especially for like our low literacy families, with information about how to access the COVID vaccine or other community resources. We try to, you know, like, we're signing somebody up, like either send them a text or a WhatsApp, or get them to like QRB code on our brochure and get them to follow our Facebook page. And that's a nice way to keep in touch with people, especially if, say, like they change numbers all the time, because they're not going to change their Facebook. So you can, you know, DM them like, hey, where'd y'all go? What's up? I miss you. What are you doing? And then again, life skills. I love all those life skills things. There's some really great stuff about budgeting. There's some really great information just about like their rights as maybe tenants or something like that. So all that kind of, there's just a wealth of information on the life skills. I've used life skills pretty much every time I go out. And maybe even though you won't have like every single one of your parents as like active members of your pack, you can still take out some time to get to know them, to get to know their concerns, you know, what kind of things have they enjoyed? Have they been in migrant programs in other states, right? So taking a little bit of time to get to know your parents whenever possible, as busy as we all get and as busy as they are too. Anytime that you have the luxury to sit down and be like, all right, even I'm just gonna take like 10 minutes, kind of get this family, get to know this family better, get to kind of see them as who they are and their individual needs and concerns and issues, like can be really powerful long term as far as like building that relationship with the families. I think I see some stuff in the chat. The exist doesn't. Somebody figure that one out. Good stuff. So we're about 5 minutes from the end here. Oops, even less than that. But is there anything that, you know, y'all been pretty active in the chat, but is there maybe one idea of something you're willing to try in addition to other comments, questions, and concerns?
Yeah, we really appreciate you sharing as much as you have. But I'd love to know if there's something in particular that you would like to try that you learned about today. Oh, good. Yeah, I would also check out the COVID-19 Padlets. As I said, there's one for parents and service providers and recruiters, and one for students that is in multiple languages. I can't even tell you how many, and it's all accurate. It's all from the CDC. So please make use of them. It's a really great way to get information out. And I'm excited for people to try the goal setting materials. That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It really is, y'all. I mean, I get it. Like, I've only probably done it, like, we only ever managed to do it with a handful of students any given year. But for the students you do with it, it's seriously so powerful. Like, it's kind of the type of thing that you have like that gut feeling that 5 to 10 years from now, like it will have been worth working with,
Yes.
With them on that goal setting. And that's another good one to do with the interns. We'll usually train the interns on how to use the goal setting materials and be like, hey, even if y'all can just get one student to do goal setting with this summer, that would be, you know, that's just like a time thing that maybe I don't have time to do, but you really could get an intern to get out there. And even if they just do it over like 2 or 3 weekends, you know, kind of smush a bunch of sessions together, they can really get, there's some good material there. Yeah, y'all,
Awesome.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you. This was lots of fun. Thanks,
then,
Alex, and thank you, Emily. And
Yeah.
please reach out at any time. We're happy to help.
Yeah, seriously, y'all. Yeah, as you
Great
can tell, I'm
job,
fairly
ladies.
verbal. Thank you. I'm fairly verbal, so I'm more of a texter or caller. But if you email me, I will get back to you. But I would rather just call me.
Hey, Emily. So my internet stopped working there. So you are the host right now, and
Oh,
you
yay.
might need to stop sharing whenever you are ready.
Okay, I'm just leaving this up for like another second in case anybody needs to get down information, and then, all right, go ahead and stop sharing.
Do you need to stop recording?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's
All right, I got